Good morning, and welcome to another inspiring episode of the Good Morning Minute, where we start the day with purpose, passion, and a little bit of power. I'm your host, Angelina Mojica, and today's conversation is part of a special series in partnership with Empower Her Steps virtual conference, a movement rooted in helping women rise, heal, and walk boldly into life that God designed for them. Our mission is simple but powerful, empowering life purpose, because we believe that when a woman finds clarity in her calling, everything changes for her family, her community, and the generations to come. So I invite you to grab your cup of coffee, take a deep breath, and get ready to be uplifted as we dive into real stories, honest lessons, and bold steps toward purpose with today's incredible guest. And that guest today is Jessa. So Jessa, tell us a little bit about yourself. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience.
So, my walk with God has been more of a stumble throughout my life. When I was very much younger, I had some family members with some introduction of God into my life. Nothing very religious or anything like that. My mom was very open minded in raising us as we had the freedom of choosing our own higher powers and our own spiritual walks and um, what would be fitting best for us. Um, Unfortunately, in my life, I had faced some very severe childhood trauma, which did include sexual abuse starting at the age of 3.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that continued until about the age of 6. After that, as even a young child before I hit my teen years, I became heavily involved in drug addiction and alcoholism, which brought a lot of consequences into my life, rather it be physically, spiritually, emotionally, and even sometimes legally. I was looking at some consequences that I didn't really want to face. Um, when I was about 19 years old, I decided to make a decision to go to detox and clean up my act. And since then, which was in 2010, I've been on this very uphill but slow, gradual, progressive path of trying to find a God centered life and trying to find some spiritual peace in my life. Um, and in my experience, not just for me, but for other women that I've talked to, and even some men that I've talked to and had friendships with, um, I've really just come to see that everyone's walk may not be exactly the same, but there are a lot of common denominators. And it is a great thing to be able to reach into the darkness because you have a common tribulation or trial that you've faced either in your past or your present. But for me, really the juice for me today is when I get to connect with people and I get to feel God working through them. And sometimes God even working through me and I didn't even plan it.
Wow. Wow. That's a lot. And I can just imagine the details behind just what you shared as well. Uh, so just kind of where you are today, what does living on purpose mean for you in this season?
So for me, I feel like my purpose has changed a lot throughout my life, especially, when we're talking about going through drug addiction and alcoholism and navigating childhood trauma that includes a lot of abuse. But for me, specifically, the sexual abuse was something that um, I don't struggle with it as much today. But there are still, sleep disturbances where I have horrible dreams,
Mm,
where they're memories. Or being out in public and like getting gut feelings or seeing red flags maybe that other people don't necessarily see,
Mm-hmm.
and having experience with that can be a little rough. But for my purpose today, honestly, and I can't even say that in the past that this was really truly a purpose of mine. I'd always look to really glorify myself rather than God through my trials and tribulations. And today I really see that me coming through a lot of that stuff. I mean, yes, I had to put the work in. I couldn't just, hit my knees and pray and then go about my day,
Mm-hmm.
But really it's just all the glory goes to God. I mean, statistically, if I had fallen in the same path, I should be 6 feet under or behind bars for the rest of my life. Or,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, worse, which is addicted.
Wow. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for sharing, what you have shared, because I know in that's a huge step. And I don't think that many understand. People that haven't gone through maybe a similar situation don't understand the bravery it takes to even share the amount that you've shared. Um, because for many of us, it looks like, and I say us because I can include myself in those similar situations. For many of us, it appears like, oh, you should be able to do this. But for those that have experienced trauma, and depending on the severity of it, it's hard because we carry a lot of shame and guilt from that, even though we were victims,
Yes.
and we don't know how to process that, especially as children. We don't know how to process that. And I've given my service to helping children that have experienced trauma, like myself, like yourself, and working with adults who want to come in and help in those trauma situations. They don't really understand that behaviors are trauma related and not something within a child's control. Would
Oh,
you
yeah.
agree? Would you disagree?
Definitely agree. I was actually going to say, when you had said, even as even as someone who has been victimized, there's so many situations as well that, especially when I'm talking about domestic, where yes, I was a victim in the past, but later on became a perpetrator. And it was
Mm,
because I was too terrified to heal. I didn't know anything any differently.
mm,
I've been stuck in that cycle from the day I was born.
mhm,
And so, without a healing process, most of the time the victims become perpetrators. And not in anything, super extreme, but have I been unfair? Have I been cruel? Have I, in past relationships, been dishonest? Have I cheated? Absolutely. Absolutely.
mm. That, and again, thank you for just your level of honesty. And I just feel the Lord's presence right now in this conversation. And I just think about what you just shared. When we don't heal, we take on the mindset of that hurt us. And
Absolutely.
it's not, I don't think it's intentional. I don't think it's because we have a conscious awareness. It's something that was introduced to us as victims, and we were surviving the moment. And there's somewhere in our life, and I don't even know if we can truly pinpoint it, but there's somewhere in our life where we now step into what that perpetrator mindset is. And people think perpetrator and they think, oh no, you're victimizing other children the way you were victimized. No, it can manifest in several different ways, whether it's
Absolutely.
um, harming yourself, harming others, like stealing, lying, cheating. You mentioned those things, um, cruelty.
Yeah.
And I just appreciate that because I know for the longest time in my life, until I started healing, and I shared a little bit of my story and my rock bottom, but until I started healing, I didn't realize that I struggled with the understanding of healthy love.
Yep,
Did
yep,
did you find yourself in that same situation?
yep. For me, so the man that I'm married to today, bless his heart, um, when I first got into a relationship with him, and he's not a perfect man either. He's like me. He comes from a lot of trauma. He comes from a spotted background.
Mhm.
Um, when we first, started dating, talking, really getting to know each other, if you haven't started healing, if you're not a healed person, getting around somebody who, isn't even necessarily healed but motivated to heal as well, it can be very uncomfortable, very off-putting.
Mhm.
Because I knew at that point I was being put into a position to, this is where the rubber meets the road,
Mhm.
or I'm just going to continue the same old cycle, which is continuing to find not even just partners, but friends or acquaintances that had that same kind of mindset where either there wasn't a willingness to heal or not even aware of the fact
Mhm.
that healing was needed.
Wow. And that's true because we've heard the term birds of a feather and it's flock together, right? And it's
And
true.
you're around the
It's all
barbershop
talking about the
enough to
mindset.
get your haircut.
And it's true because we're all talking about what we're thinking and our mindset, and that's what attracts us to the people that we relationship with, whether that's romantic or just whatever. But it also affects our relationships as well, in how we perceive a relationship, and that could be a work relationship, that could be parenting, it can be so many different things. And I talked about relationships in my last season, and all of the aspects in life for sure. What for you was the the hard lesson, the lesson you had to learn the hard way in order to say, you know what, I need to change things?
Wow. Um, I'll be honest, I'm 34 and I've felt like I've I've hit a lot of rock bottoms in my life. Um, I hit one at 19 when, I finally gave up and went to detox.
Mhm.
Um, I hit one when I became a mother and knew that when I was having my first child, uh, that his biological dad wasn't ready. That was another hard one. Um, but I think the most recent rock bottom that really, really like catapulted me into, all right, either God is everything or he is nothing.
Mm,
And that was this past Christmas Eve that morning, I lost my dad.
mm,
And, I'll be honest, I am probably more of a mama's girl. But my dad and I had a very, not in a healthy way, but a very intertwined, uh, volatile relationship.
mm,
Um, he was young when I was born, so was my mother. He had seen glimpses of sobriety, glimpses of clean time, but never anything substantial. He had multiple health problems due to alcoholism. My dad went to jail and prison more times than I could count, but for whatever reason, I could not let that man go.
mm,
No, even abuse that he took hand in, neglect that he took hand in, just not being there the way that he should have been. I couldn't let him go.
mm,
And back in, I'd say October of 2024, I'd really started to see kind of a different side to my father. He was still drinking his Heinekens every day and still had his very unhealed ways of life. But
Yeah.
for whatever reason, I could see God in him, and not like any other way I had before. And so, still knowing that my father was not a safe person, I never allowed him around my children unsupervised. If he wanted to see me or the kids, he had to come here for dinner. And all of his interactions with my children were right in front of me in the living room because I didn't want to make my children's lives in childhood a science experiment to see if my dad was healed yet.
Yeah.
Um, but then when I lost him Christmas Eve morning, it was like everything that I felt like I could have been if I didn't heal, that was me dying when he died.
Mm.
And it was hard identifying his body on Christmas Eve. Uh, Going to my mom's house for Christmas Eve, get together was a complete blur. My brain barely remembers it. Um, but since that emotional and spiritual rock bottom,
Mm.
I don't, I can't even really explain it, but it was like not even an urge, it was a necessity. I knew that I had to hit my knees, and it wasn't walking to God. I had to stumble to the altar and fall on my face.
Mm.
I had no other option spiritually and emotionally. There was no way I would have coped with that and continued to live my life the way that I knew God wanted me to. Now knowing that the man that at the same time I felt like I hated so much but also idolized was now gone.
Mm.
That was hard. It was a really, really jagged pill to swallow.
Wow. Wow. And my condolences for your loss for sure. Because I know just talking about it probably opened up some of that grief that you still have. Because, grief is this roller coaster of a ride. You're never really truly through it. And I can understand uh, having gone through some grief of my own. But in your story of your dad and the way you highlight and remember him is something that people that haven't gone through traumatic relationships don't really truly understand. And I know that when I work in the child welfare side of things, when I work with like foster parents, they don't understand why children still have love for their parents who may have kept an unsafe home or who may have done hurtful things to their children. um, they don't understand that there's still a love and a desire to have a healthy relationship with parents. And often when they adopt at a young age, and then by the time 18, and they share that, their adoption story, and they share that at 18, they go off and trying to seek out their biological family and try to connect in that manner. And I tell them it's not a bad thing because we all come from a place and we all seek to belong and we all seek to want to understand our identity, whether that is a genetic connection, a biological connection. It's still a missing piece of who we are. And in order for us to really truly understand who we are, we have to have that connection. We have to, and I think for me, you mentioned this rock bottom where you just fell on your knees. I think it was very similar for me as well. But that was almost kind of like my spiritual seeking out to really connect in relationship with God as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
Do you, is that how
yeah,
you're feeling?
yeah. And I'll be honest. I think for a very long time, the majority of my life, I'd always heard God be described, explained
Mm,
vocalized as the father, right? And growing up, my idea of a father was not great. So
mm,
I was terrified that, if this is what a father is, do I really want a God?
yeah.
Um, and so, no, my dad definitely was not perfect and he definitely had a lot of flaws. But the one thing that he did do, and I'm not, even to this day, I can't even understand why, but the one thing that he did do was he always brought up God. And
Mm,
sometimes it wasn't in a biblical sense, sometimes it was. Um, and I don't even know if that was really him or if that was just God speaking through him. But yeah, I think a lot of my trauma had instilled a fear of parenthood or having a father. It instilled a
mm,
fear of authority. It instilled a fear of vulnerability. Um, I actually was just talking with one of my Bible babes. That's what we call each other. I was talking with one of my Bible babes that I feel like ever since I started on this road of really really getting to know what my relationship is with God, getting more in the Word, that kind of thing. Um, it's the most emotional I've ever been in my life,
mm,
and not in the way of how people normally see Jessa when she's emotional. Growing up, if I
mhm,
was emotional, I was volatile and I became violent. The only emotion I had when I was younger was anger. That was it.
mhm.
And I'm not a crier, but now I'm a crier. It's kind of a gift, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I think that when like I said, when I just fell on my knees and fell to pieces, it did break me apart, but in breaking me apart, it was able to let some light in, and that's exactly what I needed.
I think that's beautiful that you share that we almost have to crack open. And the reason being is, and this is just me kind of speaking from my perception, but I mean, you can tell me if, it was different for you, but I think the reason being is because we build walls to protect ourselves emotionally because we're young, right? During the time of our trauma. But we build walls up to protect ourselves because we're trying to survive and we're trying, and you mentioned anger being like the only emotion at that, at that point that you could express is very true. Um, but because those walls are so high and so just crammed to let nothing else in. I mean, we're almost a prisoner ourselves because we can't even let ourselves out that we have, like, it has to crumble in order for us to just regain our humanity again.
Yeah, and I've got, everyone talks about how they have that little voice in their head.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, maybe it's fortunately, I don't know. My husband has ADHD, and he says he wish he didn't have this, but we'll
Uh-huh.
see. A lot of people have an auditory internal monologue. Mine was shut off due to the extreme trauma that I went through as a child. So I don't have a little voice in my head where I can talk, to myself or process thoughts. Everything that is processed up here 9 times out of 10 is visually.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great thing because I'm artistic, so it helps a lot in that sense. But as far as processing emotion, it becomes challenging. So for me, I had to come up with like this visualization almost of, the wall, the bricks that you're talking about. So for me,
Yeah.
being sexually abused, boom, there's a brick. Being physically abused, boom, there's a brick. Get
Mm-hmm.
violent relationships, boom, there's a brick. When someone abandoned me or neglected me, boom, there's a brick. So all these bricks, by the time I hit, 19, mid 20s, early 30s, the bricks at this point had stacked up so high I can no longer see the sunlight of the spirit. And I'm the only one inside this brick wall.
Mm-hmm.
No wonder why I'm so angry, you
Yeah.
know? And so I really think there's been multiple times in my life where I started to dismantle these bricks one by one, and each time I fell short and just kept rebuilding them back up even taller.
Mm.
I lost my dad, there was no more bricks to build.
Wow.
You know, that service, I had friends and family there, some family I hadn't seen in, Lord, 10 plus years.
Yeah.
Um, and we're all in there snotting and crying in front of each other. You want to talk about vulnerability? There was no more bricks at that point. Didn't
Yeah.
have it in me anymore.
Wow.
So, at that point, that visual brick wall, it had to crumble. There was no other option.
Mm. Mm. And that's where the healing starts, for
Yeah.
sure. That's where the healing does start. So I know that every day is not a great day, but when you are healing and you have that connection with the Lord, and there's His hand in it all, because you're open to seeing that life doesn't happen to us, but for us.
Yep.
What do you do to help keep yourself motivated during those lows?
So during my lows, for one, and this definitely is not an answer I would have given you even a year ago. A
Mm.
year ago, um, and some people may not agree with it, and that's totally okay. A year ago, I was first a practicing pagan, then a practicing Celtic pagan, then a practicing Satanist.
Wow. Okay.
So the Lord was really doing some work when he shined his light, because I
Mm.
was very unwilling to see anything unless it was backed by science, unless it had a reason, unless
Mhm.
you know. And you know what? Thank goodness everything doesn't have a reason. Um, but yeah, the thing that keeps me motivated, I heard it. Oh man, I think it was probably November-ish of last year. But I don't want to call her the pioneer of my spiritual growth, but she's one of my best friends today, and she's the person that I called when I said, "Hey, man, for someone who doesn't have an internal monologue, I'm hearing God talk to me, and I think I'm going crazy." And she said, "Jessa," yeah,
Mm.
she said it so perfectly too. She said, "Jessa, God does not call the equipped; He equips the called."
Mm.
And it just really, to me, simplified my relationship with God. He never said, "Hey, everyone who's got their stuff together and their ducks in a row, come and see me." God said, "All those that are tired and restless and weary and weak, come to me."
Mm.
And that was the position that I. So on a daily basis, what keeps me motivated is knowing for a fact, if life was fair, like I said, I'd be 6 feet under. I'd be behind bars. I'd be addicted.
Mhm. Yeah.
God, life's not fair. You know, I don't think any of us are necessarily favored or blessed more than the others. But I think that when each of us become willing enough to be able to see God in every situation, that's when stuff starts to change. And so for me, my motivation is, if I'm not seeing God in something, I better hit my knees and start asking where He is.
Mm. That's that's beautiful, and it's a lot, and I just take a moment of appreciation, because in it, God is in it all, for sure. And it just takes me back to the moment where I heard in my own cry out. I was sitting in the pew on a Sunday morning, waiting for my prayer to be answered, and the Lord gave me the scripture of Jeremiah 29:11. And in that scripture, the pastor continued to explain what he meant by that, and the intention for anyone isn't to suffer. God's intention isn't for people to suffer. Now, we definitely make choices because we have free will, and we make
Mhm.
choices based on our outlook in life, based on our experiences that take us down maybe a road of sorrow or pain or whatever the case may be. And we do have to live out those consequences because that's life.
Yep.
But you can definitely grow from those opportunities. And that's the intent behind every experience in life, good or bad. Grow
Yep.
from it, learn from it. Is this the continued path that you want to go down? Or do you want to change it for yourself? Do you want to change it for your children? What do you want, right? And you take those lessons learned and you take the growth that you obtain and you help teach others, you help lead others, you help be there for others. And so that's what your story reminds me of is, you're hearing God's voice and you're experiencing him, which is very foreign to you because you've never had that experience
So
in your
I
life.
thought I was losing my mind.
Wow.
I literally thought if Saray didn't have an answer for me, I was gonna call my mom and say, check me back into Olaf because something's wrong.
Wow. So what is a scripture or quote that carries you through the tough times? Because I know on
So
TikTok, so you've got a TikTok channel for those that are
Mhm.
listening out there, and you share the word on your TikTok. So what
I
is your
do.
scripture? What's your go-to scripture?
I do. So I don't, I'll be honest, I don't have a specific scripture, but by reading stories,
Hmm.
I never thought that I would be able to find myself in a story that was written millennia ago, or especially written by a man, if I'm gonna be honest. And the story is Peter.
Mm.
And the first time I read Peter, I was I was blown away. Um, like I'd said, I had gotten clean and sober at 19, so I had been in a lot of 12-step meetings, whether it been AA and A, and in there you get to hear a lot of people's stories. And there's a couple in there that, I really resonated with their story, but just like maybe the heart piece was missing. Um, and in reading Peter's story, not only did I find where my own pain and sorrow had really lied, but I also found that missing heart piece.
Mm.
And that missing heart piece for a lot of my years of life had not only been just missing out on God and who he is, but the fact that he is so faithful to us even when we're not faithful to him.
Mm.
And for me that was the biggest part because I feel like throughout my life um there was no unconditional love, and if there was, I was too far gone to even experience it. So
Wow.
for me, Peter hit home. Peter hit home hard.
Wow. Yeah, I'm just, just amazed to hear your story and the things that you're sharing. I feel so privileged. Uh, what is, and so just kind of as we start, moving to closing up our interview, what is one message you want to leave with listeners this morning?
Whew. Honestly, it's crazy because I just got done saying this to a coworker. It was more work related, but um, if somebody like me, where statistically, realistically, from all outside point of views looking in, like I said, I should have, not been here, should have been
Mm.
addicted, should be spending time in prison. Um, if God had a purpose for me, there's got to be a purpose for everybody. There has
Mm.
to be. because I couldn't even see the purpose in myself, and he saw it. I couldn't even accept, purpose coming from my mother, or positive affirmations coming from friends, or love coming from my husband. I couldn't accept any of that because I couldn't even accept the fact that I was worthy. And if you're ever sitting around wondering, am I supposed to be here? Am I worthy? It's not even a question, or you wouldn't be here. I can't, like I said, he is faithful to us even when we fall short of being faithful to him.
Mm.
And so, like I said, if there's a situation that you're in, conflict with a person you don't know how to resolve, and you don't see God in it, hit your knees to find him, because he's there.
Mm.
Never abandon us.
So true. So true. And here's a saying I like to say, and actually, I released on a mini episode of my Good Morning Minute, is you were created on purpose for purpose, is how I sum that up. But and it's funny that you mentioned that, because I've said it multiple times on that, but it is so true. Well, is there anything else you'd like to plug in? Any projects that you're doing? Where can they find you on TikTok or social media?
Yeah, so on TikTok, my name on there is Pretty Mantis. That's been my name on there ever since I created it, and I just didn't want to change it because I wanted people to be able to find me and be familiar. And you will even see a couple of my old posts where I am practicing not so godly rituals, and I kept those on there on purpose, so that way people can see for themselves what that flip was. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and on Facebook, my name is Jessa Payne. I got my husband's last name on there. And on both, I really am geared towards sharing the word. God said, if you feel like you can't share the gospel, just so you got a million followers on these platforms, here you go.
Hmm.
So that's what I did.
Well, and we're always just reaching out to that one person out there that really just need to hear your word today, just your story of inspiration. And I want to thank you for sharing your heart, your story, and your light with us today. Conversations like this remind us that purpose isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, growing through what we go through, and trusting that every step matters. So, friends, here at the Good Morning Minute and through the Empower Her Steps movement, we believe every woman has a calling worth discovering and a voice worth using. So, wherever you are today, remember your purpose is powerful and you're not walking alone. All right, friends, until next time, you know who I am. I'm Angelina Mojica, your life coach, sending you much love, much peace, many blessings.